So here's the paradox we really need to get into today. Does a king sit on the throne because of his own strength, his own will?
His own might.
Exactly. Or is he sitting there simply because he's being supported by, well, the ghosts of the past? Is power something you achieve, or is it just a loan from the dead?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? Agency versus legacy.
Sure.
And if you look at the part of the sky we're exploring today, the answer, it leans very heavily toward legacy.
Right.
We all like to think we're self-made, but this particular star, it argues we're just the tip of a very, very old spear.
Okay, so let's open the books on Magha.
Magha. It's a heavy word.
It feels heavy. We're stepping out of the watery, emotional zone of Cancer and crossing this huge threshold into Simha, the lion.
We are. And this is the very beginning, the first slice of Leo, right from 0 degrees to 13 degrees in 20 minutes.
The entrance to the throne room?
Pretty much, yeah.
And the name itself, Magha, that's Mu-Jeha, it usually gets translated as the mighty or the magnificent.
Right. It has that sense of grandeur.
It really does. It sounds like something you'd read on a statue in some ruined city, Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
It absolutely projects dominance. But there's another translation that complicates things right away.
Which is?
Magha can also mean the gift.
The gift. Okay, that changes things. That implies a transaction.
Exactly.
If I'm mighty because I built my own kingdom, that's one thing. But if I'm mighty because someone just handed me the keys, that's totally different.
That is the friction point. Think about a crown. If a crown is passed down from your father, it's a gift, sure. But it's a heavy gift.
That's a burden.
It's a burden. And that's the core of this star. It's the start of Simha, the sign of power. But it's a power that's been bestowed. It hasn't necessarily been earned by the person holding it.
And this isn't just some metaphor. The astronomy actually backs this up. We're talking about the star Regulus.
Alpha Leonis. In the West, it's often called the heart of the lion, Cor Leonis.
It's one of the 4 royal stars of the ancient world, right? The Watcher of the North.
It is. I think I read somewhere that Regulus is something like 100 times more luminous than our own sun.
Wow. So it demands attention. You can't just ignore it.
You really can't. It's incredibly potent. And when you look up at the night sky, Magha forms that sickle shape.
Yeah.
The head and chest of the lion. It just screams royalty.
It screams, I am here.
It does. But the symbol the Vedic seers gave it, that's where the psychology gets really interesting.
The palanquin.
The palanquin.
It's such a specific image. A throne is fixed, it's stationary. A horse, well, you ride that yourself. But a palanquin.
You're being carried.
Right. It's a carriage without wheels, carried on the shoulders of other people.
And that one image just unlocks the whole secret of Magha. If you're riding in a palanquin, you're elevated, you look important, you're moving forward.
But you're not moving yourself.
Not at all. You are being carried by the labor and the energy and the support of others.
So the mighty Magha native isn't actually walking on their own 2 feet?
Spiritually speaking, they're kind of helpless without that support structure. They're literally being carried by their lineage. The progress they make is fueled by the accumulated merit, the punya, of their ancestors.
They're the visible figurehead, but the engine is totally invisible.
And if the bearers decide to put the palanquin down, the king goes absolutely nowhere.
Which must be a terrifying thought for a king.
It has to be.
This brings us to the entities that are actually running the show here. I was expecting, I don't know, a solar god, maybe a war god.
Sure.
But the ruling deities of Magha are the Pitris.
The pit, pronounced Pitri.
Which translates as the fathers, or the ancestral spirits.
And this is so crucial. Magha is the only Nakshatra that's ruled directly by the ancestors. The Pittas aren't just some random ghosts, haunting an old house. They are the divine progenitors.
So it's like the ancient version of genetics.
It is. It's the spiritual side of DNA. We inherit physical traits, sure, the nose, the eyes, but we also inherit the karmic debts, the status, the unfinished business, and all the blessings of our bloodline.
And the pits are the guardians of that whole transfer.
They are. And there's a leader mentioned, a chief of these ancestors named Aryaman.
Aryaman.
That's the one.
Yeah.
He's like the cosmic administrator of all these ancestral laws.
He's described as the friend, but in a very specific way. It's not the friend you go out for a drink with.
No.
It's the friend who helps you move house because he gave his word.
Right. He represents the contract of friendship, reliability, duty. Aryaman is the force that holds society together through tradition and making sure the customs of the forefathers are respected.
So if Magha is the throne, Aryaman makes sure you don't just kick your feet up on the furniture, you follow the protocol.
Protocol is everything here. And that's why Magha is so obsessed with lineage. You'll find people with strong planets here are just fascinated by genealogy or history. They take this immense pride in their family name.
They can feel the eyes of the Piton on them.
Constantly, which ties right into the ritual mentioned in the text, the Shraddha.
Shraddha. It's a ritual of feeding the ancestors, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Often with grains. And the word Magha itself can be linked to grain. It's a whole philosophy of mutual indebtedness.
So the idea is that you're in debt to the pits for your very existence, for your body.
Yes, and you repay that debt by nourishing them through memory and ritual.
And if you don't feed them,
well, then the root system withers. The idea is if you nourish the roots, the ancestors, then the fruit, the descendants, will flourish.
But if you cut off the roots, the tree just falls over. It doesn't matter how shiny the throne is.
The palanquin stops moving.
This dependency on the past creates a really fascinating conflict when we look at the planets involved. Because we're in Simha, Leo, which is ruled by the sun.
The sun, the king of the solar system, the ego I am, the present moment.
The Nakshatra ruler, the landlord of this specific cosmic neighborhood, is Ketu.
Ketu, the south node.
Yeah.
The headless body.
And Ketu is all about detachment. The past. Dissolving boundaries. So you have the sun wanting to shine and rule the material world.
And Ketu wanting to pack up and leave for the spiritual world.
That sounds like a recipe for a huge existential crisis.
It's a massive internal contradiction.
Yeah.
But when it works, when it synthesizes, it creates this very specific archetype, spiritual nobility.
Spiritual nobility. So the power is there, but the attachment to it isn't.
Exactly. The sun gives the authority to rule, but Ketu provides the detachment to understand that the ruling isn't about you, it's about the lineage. It's for the past.
So a developed Magha person rules not for their own ego, but as a kind of custodian.
Yes. They're sitting on the throne, but they know they're just keeping the seat warm for its timeline. They realize they're the rider in the palanquin, not the owner of it.
And the shadow side comes out when that balance breaks down.
It does. If the sun shines too bright and just ignores Ketu, you get arrogance. You get the king who thinks he built the kingdom all by himself.
He forgets the ghosts.
He forgets the ghosts, and if Ketu takes over completely,
Then what?
you get this deep sense of emptiness at the core of power. You have the throne, you have the applause, but you feel hollow, like a ghost in your own callus. It's like the sun shining on a void.
That concept of the void, it actually brings us to the specific Shakti, or power, of this star. It's called Tyagashīlana Shakti.
Tyagashīlana Shakti. It's a powerful phrase.
And the translation is intense, the power to leave the body.
It really stops you in your tracks.
Most people would hear that and just think of death, the power to die. But in the context of a king and a throne, it feels like it must mean something more.
It does include physical death, for sure. Magha is a bridge between worlds, but Taiga means renunciation. This is the power of transcendence. It's the ability to voluntarily detach from the material shell.
Like astral travel or something like that?
High-level meditators often have strong Magha placements for that very reason. But let's apply it back to the king archetype. What is the ultimate test of a king?
Knowing when to quit.
Abdication. The power to leave the body of the state. To realize your role is finished and to step down with dignity.
To let go of the identity of the king and just return to spirit.
Which requires an immense amount of that Ketu energy to have the entire world at your feet and just walk away.
So Magha is the doorway between the living Simha and the sun and the dead, the Pits and Ketu.
And the native is standing right in that doorway.
Okay, let's try to ground this a bit. We've been talking about ghosts and astral travel, but the ancient texts give a symbol for the Magha personality that is, well, it's pretty jarring.
You mean the animal symbol?
Yes. We're in the sign of the lion. We're talking about the mighty. And the animal totem is a male rat.
It definitely disrupts the image.
Why a rat? I mean, you'd expect a tiger or an eagle. A rat almost feels like an insult to the king.
It feels like a demotion, I agree.
Yeah.
Until you start thinking about the logistics of power, mythologically, the rat is the vehicle of Ganesha, the remover of obstacles.
Okay.
But functionally, a rat is the ultimate survivor. It gets in everywhere, it manages resources, it finds the grain, it navigates all the hidden tunnels, while the lion just sits on the rock looking majestic.
So the mighty king is also a master of supply chains.
The lion commands, but the rat executes. It tells us that despite the royal exterior, the Magha native is actually a shrewd manager. They're timely. They can navigate tight spots. They're not just about pomp and circumstance.
They know where the grain is stored.
They have to. Which leads us to the final paradox here, which is the caste assignment. In the Vedic system, Magha, the star of kings, is assigned the Shudra caste.
The servant caste.
The servant caste.
That seems completely backwards. Shouldn't it be Kshatriya, the warrior ruler caste?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But this is probably the most profound lesson of the star. To rule is to serve.
If you're not serving, you're not a king. You're just a tyrant.
Exactly. The king is the first servant of the state. And if he forgets he's serving the people and serving the pits, his power becomes illegitimate. He works for them.
And that explains the shadow side the sources warn about. The crushing foot of the lion.
Yes. If that element of service is lost, the power becomes heavy. It crushes. The shadow traits are arrogance, racial or family superiority, a desperate need for adulation.
They want the palanquin, but they treat the people carrying it with contempt.
That's a perfect way to put it. There's also a harsh old translation about a woman-hater tendency.
I saw that. What's that about?
I think it points to a struggle with the feminine principle. Magha is so invested in the patriarchal lineage, the fathers, that it can become rigid. It can reject fluid, creative, feminine energy in favor of, this is how we've always done it.
It becomes calcified. A king who loves the law more than his people.
A king who worships the ghosts so much he forgets the living.
So if we pull all this together, we have the sun in Ketu, the lion and the rat, the king and the servants, the living and the dead.
It's a star of immense tension, and because of that, immense potential.
For someone who's listening to this, maybe they have planets in this star. What's the real takeaway for them?
I think the takeaway is a redefinition of the word I.
The I is actually a we.
That's it. Magha teaches us that I is a composite. You think you're acting alone. You're not. You're the current face of a lineage stretching back thousands of years.
So your victories are their victories. Your failures are theirs too.
It's comforting, but it's also a lot of pressure. It gives you purpose, though. If you're struggling, Magha says to look back. Draw strength from the root system.
You don't have to invent the wheel.
You just have to drive the chariot that was left for you and keep it on the road for the next driver.
It really dismantles that whole idea of the self-made man.
Because there's no such thing. We are all standing on shoulders. Magha just demands that we look down and acknowledge who's holding us up.
So here's the thought to take away with you. If your current success, your comfort, your whole life is really a gift from those who came before you, a loan from the pits,
Then what are you building that will support the palanquin of the ones who come next?
are you the king?
Or are you just the chair the king sits on?
Something to think about in the dark.